Every year, people from across the world leave behind everything they have ever known. They leave their homes, their families, and sometimes their countries forever. Some are escaping violence, some are fleeing political persecution. Others are simply searching for a better future. For many, the United States represents hope, a place where hard work can build a new life. But for thousands of migrants, the first stop on that journey is not freedom, it is detention. Hidden behind high fences, razor wire, and heavily guarded gates lies a vast network of immigration detention centers spread across the United States. Every day, tens of thousands of men, women, and children are held inside these facilities while their immigration cases are decided. Some remain for only a few days. Others spend months, and some wait even longer. Unlike criminal prisons, immigration detention is part of a civil legal process. Many detainees have never been convicted of a violent crime. Their future depends on interviews, court hearings, asylum decisions, and complex immigration laws that can take months or even years to resolve. Supporters argue that detention is necessary to enforce immigration laws, protect national security, and ensure that people appear for their immigration hearings. Critics argue that prolonged detention can separate families, create humanitarian concerns, and impose significant financial costs. At the center of this debate lies an important question. Who operates these detention centers? How much money does the system cost? And why has immigration detention become one of the most controversial issues in modern America? A system decades in the making. To understand today's detention system, it helps to look back at how it began. For most of the 20th century, immigration enforcement in the United States relied on limited holding facilities, used briefly while cases were processed. That changed in the 1980s and 1990s as lawmakers passed stricter immigration laws and detention became a more central tool of enforcement. What started as a small network of holding centers grew, over the following decades, into one of the largest detention systems in the world. Today, on any given day, facilities across the country hold tens of thousands of people, a number that rises and falls depending on federal policy, funding levels, and enforcement priorities. Who runs these facilities? The United States maintains one of the world's largest immigration detention systems. Some facilities are operated directly by government agencies. Others are county jails that contract a portion of their beds to house immigration detainees. And a significant share are run by private companies under contracts with the federal government. These private companies are paid a daily rate for every person held, sometimes called a per diem, which means their revenue rises and falls with detention numbers. Supporters of these partnerships argue they provide additional capacity, operational flexibility, and the ability to scale facilities up or down faster than government agencies could manage alone. Critics question whether profit incentives are compatible with the humane treatment of detainees, arguing that a business model built around occupancy rates can create pressure to keep beds filled, rather than to release people who pose no danger or flight risk. Defenders of the system counter that private operators are still bound by federal detention standards and oversight, and that contracting allows the government to avoid the long-term costs of building and staffing new facilities itself. Following the money each year, billions of taxpayer dollars are allocated to immigration enforcement, detention operations, transportation, healthcare, food services, facility maintenance, and legal administration. Congress sets the budget. Federal agencies negotiate the contracts. Companies, some publicly traded, compete for them. For shareholders, detention contracts can represent a stable revenue stream tied to policy rather than the open market. For taxpayers, the same contracts represent a recurring public expense that fluctuates with detention populations and policy decisions. Local communities are part of this equation too. Some towns argue that detention centers bring jobs and economic activity. Others argue the human cost outweighs the economic benefit. The human stories behind the statistics. Behind every statistic is a human story. A mother hoping to reunite with her children, a father searching for safety, a teenager fleeing gang violence, an asylum seeker escaping war. Some detainees wait weeks for a single court date. Others are released on bond while their case continues. Some are deported. Some are granted asylum and begin building a new life. And on the other side of the fence are immigration officers and facility staff, tasked with enforcing the law while balancing security, policy, and humanitarian responsibilities. Often in facilities that are understaffed, overcrowded, or far from legal resources. Advocacy groups have documented cases of inadequate medical care, limited access to attorneys, and long stretches of isolation. Government agencies and contractors have, at times, pointed to internal reviews and accreditation standards as evidence that conditions meet required benchmarks. Independent oversight bodies, including government watchdogs, have published reports reaching different conclusions depending on the facility, the year, and the standards being measured against. The disagreement itself is part of the story. The legal maze immigration cases move through a system separate from criminal courts. Detainees may face asylum interviews, bond hearings, appeals, and shifting policy guidance, all while held in detention, often with limited access to legal counsel. Unlike criminal defendants, immigration detainees are not guaranteed a government-appointed attorney. Many represent themselves, and outcomes can differ sharply depending on representation, jurisdiction, and how quickly a hearing is scheduled. This legal uncertainty is, for many critics, one of the most troubling aspects of the system. People can spend months or years detained while their case remains undecided. A nation's ongoing debate. The debate over immigration detention is about far more than buildings and budgets. It raises difficult questions about justice, security, human rights, national sovereignty, and the price a nation is willing to pay to control its borders. Policymakers continue to propose alternatives: electronic monitoring, community supervision programs, expedited case processing, each with its own supporters and skeptics. Meanwhile, the underlying questions remain unresolved. How should a nation balance enforcement with humanitarian obligation? Who should bear the cost, and who should be allowed to profit from that balance? Voices from both sides ask a former detainee about their time inside, and you will often hear about the waiting, the uncertainty of not knowing when a hearing will come or what the outcome will be. Ask a facility administrator, and you may hear about the daily challenge of running a secure operation with limited staff in a population that changes constantly. Ask an immigration attorney, and you may hear about clients who cannot reach them, court dates that change without notice, and case files piling up faster than they can be reviewed. Ask a lawmaker who supports the current system, and you may hear about border security and the responsibility to enforce laws passed by Congress. Ask one who wants reform, and you may hear about due process and the moral cost of a system built around occupancy and contracts. None of these voices is the whole story. Together, they describe a system that touches law enforcement, federal budgets, local economies, and the lives of people who are simply waiting for an answer. What comes next? Every new administration brings new immigration priorities, and with them, new pressure on the detention system, sometimes expanding it, sometimes scaling it back. What rarely changes is the underlying structure, a civil process run partly by government and partly by private contractors, funded by taxpayers, and judged very differently depending on who is doing the judging. Whatever comes next, the questions raised here are unlikely to disappear. They will keep shaping budget debates in Washington, court rulings across the country, and the daily lives of people inside facilities most Americans will never see. Conclusion. In this documentary, we have examined how America's immigration detention system works, who funds it, who manages it, what supporters and critics say, and why this issue continues to shape one of the most heated political debates in the United States. This is not simply a story about detention. It is a story about law, politics, business, and the human search for a place to call home.